Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, muni muli wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville, in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so happy that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, wherever you find your podcast. And please tell all of your family and friends, your kids, teachers, librarians, principals, whoever might be interested in the podcast, please let them know all about the show. Our guests today are Scott Rothman and Pete Oswald. They're here to celebrate Blue Bison Needs a Haircut. Before we invite our guests into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by A is for Always, an adoption alphabet written by Linda Cutting. A is for Always, with your hand in mind. Adoption's a gift that will last for all time. With gentle rhymes and lovely illustrations, A is for Always celebrates the joy and love of adoption from A to Z. With B for birth parents, Q for questions, and U for understanding. It frames challenging aspects of adoption in a way children can understand. Best of all, each page shows a different adoptive family of cuddly animals welcoming and cherishing a new child. It's a beautiful book. It deserves a place in your family library. A is for Always, an adoption alphabet by Linda Cutting. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by The Magic of Amigo by Nuria Camahort. Are you looking to help your kids learn how to speak Spanish? Well, The Magic of Amigo, they're the best bilingual children's books. The way they came about is really cool. Nuria has been speaking to little kids in a language they don't understand for many years. She loves the idea of immersing kids into a new language. It is the best way to learn a language. And she has taken her experience to create a full 10-month curriculum for preschoolers, kids aged 2 to 5 years old. The curriculum includes the methodology, the themes, activities, songs, and useful links that will help a parent help their child become a Spanish speaker. And the kids, they're going to love Amigo. Amigo is this adorable gray elephant that is just so lovable. You're going to fall in love with Amigo. Your kids are going to fall in love with Amigo. And they're all going to love learning how to speak Spanish. The Magic of Amigo by Nuria Camahort. Join us right now from the great states of Connecticut and California. Our guests today are here to celebrate their new picture book. It's called Blue Bison Needs a Haircut. Please welcome to the show first, Pete Oswald, the illustrator. Hey, Pete, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jed. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for being with us from Los Angeles and returning to the show, Scott Rothman down in Connecticut. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Good, Jed. Hi, everybody. Nice to be back.
Scott, why don't we start with you? Tell us all about Blue Bison and why he needs a haircut.
Well, I don't want to give away the reasons why Blue Bison needs a haircut. I will say it is for some reason that he needs a haircut. Okay. But this is a really fun book that Pete and I made together over the pandemic. And I think it's very pandemic themed at a time. I mean, Jed, the listeners can't see, but I am a bald man. Pete has a glorious head of hair. But I hear that a lot of people had a problem getting haircuts during that period of time. And this was largely based on that. And also, I mean, this isn't the idea for this came because Pete posted a picture called Blue Bison Needs a Haircut with the great Blue Bison, Shaggy Blue Bison on it. And that's, I think I called him or emailed him and said, hey, I think there's a book here. You've given everything we need for a book. We have the image and we know what the main character wants. And it just sort of all laid out perfectly, at least in my brain. And Pete was up for it. Yeah, not sure I answered your question, but there's a lot of information.
Well, that's awesome. So, Pete, where did the idea to post that Blue Bison needing a haircut come from?
It's a really good question. I'm not sure what inspired that. I kind of in my downtime when I'm not illustrating books or working on movies, I'll just do like animal sketches and little paintings and stuff. And I somehow was inspired to do this Blue Bison, and he was this shaggy kind of looking fellow, and really just a fun, like it was just kind of like, hey, this seems like a fun character to draw and paint. And I posted the image, and literally like minutes later, Scott texted me, and I'm thinking nothing of it. And he's like, this is incredible. He's like, this should be our next book. And I didn't give it, I was like, really? I mean, what? And then the beautiful kind of magical part about Scott and his creativity is like, he sees one thing and he just goes, like he had already like created this story, where I thought it was just kind of like a sketch or a little painting. And that's kind of how the Blue Bison was born. It was pretty amazing.
Oh, that sounds like fun. I imagine you might have been, get the message from Scott and thought to yourself, what's he talking about? I don't even remember posting that thing.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, oh, sure. Well, like he's like, well, let's talk later. He's like, I have an idea, and I was like, I'm game, because I love creating and collaborating with Scott. We did the Underwear Dragon series, and we have this, like, I think kind of symbiotic relationship where we kind of finished each other's sentences in the children's book world. So it was, I was like, if you see it, I'm totally game.
That's awesome. That's awesome. One of the things that we've heard so much from publishers and from other authors is that there are a lot of publishers who don't really like authors and illustrators collaborating together. They don't want them talking together. And on a number of occasions, when we've had illustrator and authors on together, it was the first time that they had met, being on the podcast. And one woman broke down in tears. It was really sweet. Yeah. It sounds like your publishers are all up for you guys working together.
Yeah, I think we were lucky because we had this track record together, and I think the Underwear Dragon books did relatively well, and that was a partnership that just immediately worked from the beginning. But it's always baffled me why they keep authors and illustrators apart. It seems very antiquated. Like maybe there was a great idea for doing that like 40 years ago, but I think people have learned how to work together better, and it just seems like cutting out the middleman, and so many things could spark if authors and illustrators could collaborate more. But yeah, no, Pete, I mean, that's one of the great things about having at least from my end of things, having a frequent collaborator, that we do have this shorthand now, and that I can just reach out to him. And out of that came this what I think is a great book. And it was entirely because Pete and I knew each other from our work in the Underwear Dragon that this even happens. If I was just an admirer of Pete's from afar, and we hadn't established a relationship, I'm not sure this would have come about.
Mm-hmm. It is weird. I think it's the only art where people who are collaborating don't speak to each other. Certainly, our musicians are collaborating and working and creating together. Maybe not always friendly, but if the stories we hear about the studios are true. But is this your preferred way to create, Pete, to actively work with the author?
I work in both ways, and I think both ways, are successful. It just depends on the dynamic. I think there was, just something that Scott and I immediately hit it off, and we realized that we think very, very similarly. And, I love when he just like expands on the story, and he has such a great sense of humor. So, I think that part was just like, well, yeah, it's a given, and to be able to like just interact that way. And, from a traditional standpoint where you're usually not talking with the author is really freeing, and kind of like, oh, this is cool. This becomes like more of a collaboration. We build upon each other. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like, we make the idea better at each stage of the process.
Yeah. Scott, you were sharing that, the idea for the story sprang up when you saw this image. And is this the way you typically come up with story ideas, that you see something and then bang, you just run with it? Or was this a unique experience?
I would say it's kind of a unique experience, but I love it. I mean, I would do this all the time. That's the great thing about the world that we work in, is this marriage between words and pictures. And that said, I mean, Pete has a wordless, book. Hike has no words, right, Pete?
Yeah, there's like a couple, but it's I'm not much of a writer.
Yeah. Well, you write with pictures, and Hike is a fantastic book for anyone who has not yet checked that out. But I love it. I never worked with like writing prompts or anything, but it's really inspiring to have the character. I think it's really helpful in which is a big part of this, in the selling of these things, for a publisher to be able to see what they're, like, I'm trying to paint a picture with these words, but the picture does so much more heavy lifting than I'm ever able to do, and just so easily and effortlessly, that I think it's a really great way to work. Mm-hmm. That said, when we made the Underwear Dragon books, I had written the words, and Pete just like overnight drew the Underwear Dragon. So that was kind of this happy thing that happened also the exact inverse way. But yeah, Jed, to answer your question, I would love to keep doing this. When a great artist like Pete can come up with a character that sort of strikes his fancy, without the story. I love filling in the blanks of the story. It's such a cool challenge and so inspiring.
And
go ahead, Pete.
I love the part about what you're saying, Scott, about the marriage between pictures and words, because ultimately, like that is what picture books are, and in any other art form, like that's what makes this art form so great, right? Is having great text and great illustrations, and then when the two come together, it's something totally different. Whether the words come first or the illustrations come, it doesn't really. At the end of the day, it's like it's that collaboration between the two that makes, in my opinion, this art form, like, it's my favorite. Like it is telling a story with pictures and words is the best thing, and it's when those two collide and create this kind of like magical connection that makes this art form great. Yeah,
I really love that you're referring to this as an art form, and as you're speaking, picture books are a very unique art form, and I think too many people just kind of take it for granted, and it's like, picture books, it's for kids, and my kids are going to read it, and it's just a silly little story. And picture books are so much more and can be so much more. And I think if I would really encourage families as they're selecting picture books for their kids, think of it as if, because you are, think that I'm sharing some art with my kids, and this is going to be a fun experience for me and the kids. It's not a chore, me reading to my kids every night. It's something I look forward to. It's something that we can share. And I think that could really enhance the time kids and families spend together reading.
Totally. I mean, Pete and I are both parents of young children, young picture book readers. And, that was, and I think this is part of what I consider to be just unbelievable, perfect pairing of our two sensibilities. But, I write, and I think Pete draws to both entertain adults and children. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a really big part of it for me. I want to personally, maybe it's selfish, but I want to find my own books funny. And I want to be able to share that love for the things I'm reading with my kids. I mean, it comes through when you're reading it. If you're into it, your kids are going to be into it. And the inverse is true. If you're not, they're going to be like, I didn't love that book. Mm-hmm. So I think that's certainly important to me. And then just to go back to your thing about picture books being works of art. I mean, that's entirely how I look at it. Like when I buy a book from a bookstore, when I buy a picture book specifically, I feel like I'm taking home a great work of art. I mean, that I don't buy, and I don't have the bankroll to be buying, enormous paintings, but I do have $18 to spend on a beautiful picture book. Mm-hmm. And they really are like just so inspiring. The artists and illustrators who are putting these books together and making them look beautiful. It's just like you get to own a little piece of that. And that's part of the fun for me.
Yeah. Pete, where the ideas for these characters that you just kind of doodle around with in between projects, do they spring from someplace that you're aware of, or do they just kind of appear and you're, taking over?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of times, the personality of the character is based on either something that I'm feeling or somebody that I know. It's always the personality that regardless whether the character is a bison or a dragon or a seed or whatever that is, but it's always about that connection of an emotional quality, and it's usually it's probably like, especially I think this one, especially, we made this book during, like Scott said, during the pandemic. I hadn't been to the barber shop in a while, and it was I think like subliminally, even though I probably didn't really know it, recognize it at the time, but I was expressing that feeling, like drawing this shaggy blue bison, that was kind of coming out. So it's always related to something that usually that I'm emotionally going through, or somebody that I know, or I'm going to make that character like my uncle that it talks a lot, whatever that is, So I think it's based on things that are recognizable.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, Scott, like you, I'm follically challenged, so I can.
You have more on the sides, though, Jed.
And it did get pretty shaggy during pandemic, which I really liked because it was nice feeling here where I used to feel it all the time. Right. Any talk of Blue Bison becoming a series?
So we are hoping that it becomes, I could write these things. Honestly, I think Pete doesn't even realize the genius of his original spark, just posting this Instagram thing. But I think part of the genius is the visual of it. But for me as an author, and an author who has to create stories out of these visual images, him just giving Blue Bison Needs a haircut was so strong to me. Like I could write a million Bison. Pete and I have been referring to it as the Bison verse, like the MCU, that we could just write endless stories of about all these bison. So in the book, which comes out next week, there is Blue Bison has a sister named Bubblegum Bison. And she's going to be, there she is.
There she is.
Holding the scissors. Yeah, Pete's holding up the book. And she's going to be the star of the sequel to this, which we're really excited that they're going to let us make another one. And that one is called, spoiler alert, Bubblegum Bison Needs a Bath. I think. Is that right, Pete?
Yeah.
Is that what we pitched? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will speak for me. I could write these endlessly. I love it. And you just need a bison, and that bison needs something. And the books write themselves.
Oh, that's wonderful. And as Pete was showing us the book, I also noticed you had the red and white and blue stripes that we used to see at the barbershops.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it was kind of obviously, he wants to go to the barbershop, and those colors and those you always have that on the side of a barbershop building. And there's something about, I think, about going to a barber, and at least for me and like my family, we go to the same barbershop, and we have the same barber that cuts our hair, and it's like this ritual, right? Like it's that kind of self-care. And I think when we couldn't do that, there was this like sense of loss, right? Like sense of loss of community, sense of loss of taking care of yourself. And I think it's just important. Like that's another kind of subliminal message. It's just like self-care, like take care of yourself, like, and that's good. That's a good thing. Makes everybody feel nice about themselves.
Yeah. Scott, I don't know about you, but I typically, when I need a haircut, I go to Supercuts or one of those places, and it's 5 minutes in and out. It's real. It takes them longer to trim my eyebrows than it does to cut my hair. But on the occasion that I've gone into a barbershop in the city, it's an hour and a half, and they're measuring, and it's so.
Jen, I used to, I think it's lovely that you go to the barber still. Again, you're working with more than I got, but I was hanging on for dear life. I loved what Pete was referencing. I love the ritual of it. And you could kind of zone out, for 20 minutes and, speak to the barber, talk about the Mets or whatever. And, my family by family, of course, I mean, my wife was like, why are you blowing $20? Like, you do not need a haircut anymore. So now I get my daughter, my 14-year-old daughter, to do it. And I cannot tell you, it takes about 2 minutes. Again, I have like 4 follicles up there. I have this $15 razor that I bought. She hates nothing more in the world than doing this for me. I pay her like $5. I don't know what the big problem is, but she cannot stand it. It is the worst part of her year. She has to do it like once every 2 months. But so I hung on for a while.
It makes a little money out of it. That's a good thing.
Yeah. There you go.
The money, which works in every other, money's a great motivator for her. But,
cutting dad's hair, maybe.
Cutting dad's hair is a bridge too far. Yeah.
That could be a picture book. Scott's daughter has to give her dad a haircut.
I like that. That's it.
Yeah. That's it. I kind of like the title. It's so.
Yeah. It just rolls off the
Scott's daughter has to give her a haircut. Yeah. Why?
Well, this is really fun. It's obvious that you guys love working and collaborating together. The Underwear Dragon was such a fun book and fun series. Will we see more from the Underwear Dragon?
You never know, Jed. You never know. We are currently trying to develop it as a TV show with this great place called Mercury Filmworks up in Canada, and they've been fantastic partners. And we're all trying to bring that story to life, and maybe that might spur more Underwear Dragon books. Who knows? I certainly would love to write more. It's such a great character that Pete came up with. And it's so much fun envisioning him getting into all sorts of different problems and situations.
Yeah. I think there's a lot more stories that we want to tell about the Underwear Dragon and kind of his world. So the hopes is that we can create some more stories for him and keep his legacy going for sure.
There you go. Long live the Underwear Dragon.
Right.
And long live the Blue Bison and the Bubblegum Bison and all the other great characters that are going to come from the minds of our guests. Hey, Scott, tell everybody, please, where they can go to find out more about you and find out more about your books.
Jed, I think you stumped me on this last time we spoke. I think you've stumped me again. I've not done. I think my website is scottrothmanwriter.com, but I'm not sure that that's the case. I think that's pretty close. I know if you Google me, you can get to all the. Through a lot of people say that, just Google me.
What about if Scott's daughter has to give him a haircut?
Yeah.
No, maybe not.
Go to Pete's website and then see if you can from there get to mine. I have an Instagram. I don't know, at Scott M. Rothman, maybe. Twitter. I have a Twitter. I have it all. Not a great answer, Jed, but there you go.
There you go. Okay. let's test fate here. Pete is their way from
Yeah. You can go to PeteOswald.com, and then you can also follow me on Instagram at Pete Oswald. That's usually where I have the most updated info.
And because I follow Pete Oswald on Instagram, we have this book series now.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Who knows what's going to come next from these two guys? I'm really excited. We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Blue Bison Needs a Haircut, Scott Rothman and Pete Oswald. Scott, Pete, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jed.
Thanks for having us.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We'll be back at the Orange County Children's Book Festival, sharing some highlights and interviews with some of the authors that we met at the largest children's book festival in North America. That's all happening on the next episode of the podcast. Hey, please connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Reading With Your Kids on TikTok, and at Jedley Magic on Twitter. We'd love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Please be sure to click that contact button at the top of the page to let us know what we're doing well, to let us know what we could be doing better, and to let us know who you would like to hear on the next episode of the Reading With Your Kids podcast, or the future episode of the Reading With Your Kids podcast. Don't tell us who you would have loved to have heard on a past episode. That really doesn't help us a whole lot. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we're going to start by thanking our guests, Scott Rothman and Pete Oswald. Please be sure to check out Blue Bison Needs a Haircut. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Mirabella Q, Jordan Saley, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.